Clint Esposito here with a little bit of story time today. We are going to read an article about Evel Knievel's Wembley Stadium jump. Evel Knievel arrived in London May 6, 1975, which gave him about 3 weeks to promote his next big jump at Wembley Stadium. After the Snake River disaster, this would be his triumphant return and there was no need to hold back. Evel might have been unknown in Great Britain, but he was made for the British tabloids press. He spoke only in headlines, dressed only in his flamboyant outfits, carried his cane full of whiskey. That's awesome. Drove around in the candy apple red customized Cadillac pickup truck. I didn't even know that this was a thing. Frank Gifford, the former New York Jets running back, famous now as Monday Night Football's play-by-play man, was the Wide World of Sports broadcaster for this jump. He had become friends with Knievel, spent some time with him beyond the normal ABC meetings. He liked Knievel, liked his style. He was a little wacko, Gifford said. I kind of admired him. He liked the wacko. The night before the jump, Knievel asked the 44-year-old Gifford to have dinner with him. They went to a restaurant where Knievel, surrounded by Brits, told his stories, drank straight from the cane. He didn't bother to buy liquor in the place, I guess. Drank an assortment of old drinks that arrived at the table, other drinks. Dinner was followed by a visit to a string of pubs and more drinks. The next day, he was a mess. Gifford was with him when he went out to Wembley and took a look at the ramp and the 13 buses he would attempt to jump. I can't do this, he said. Gifford's reaction was, what? What do you mean you can't do this? If you can't do it, then don't try. Pull the plug right now. I can't do that, Evel said. Take a couple of buses out of line. Easy. I can't do that, Knievel said. He said that there was not enough room on the takeoff to get up to speed. Not enough speed to clear the buses. He said that was too bad, but he was still going to jump. Gifford wanted nothing to do with the stunt that was too risky. He didn't want to be part of a televised death. Panicked, he searched for Doug Wilson, the producer. He explained his worries. Wilson became worried. They went back to see Knievel at his trailer. They knocked on the door. No answer. Knocked on the door again. No answer. Opened the door, and Knievel was asleep. Gifford woke him up and asked how he felt now. Knievel said he was fine. He would find the speed somewhere. The show would take place. Gifford still wasn't sure about any of this. Still was nervous, but at the appointed time, 20 minutes after 4, I like how they avoided saying 4:20, on a Monday afternoon in London, he was in his yellow ABC blazer. Knievel was a new set of leathers, blue for Wembley, with enormous white French cuffs. He was doing some wheelies, then his 2 warm-up trips down the ski slope, they call it. Stop down the ski slope. Stop down the ski slope. Stop. I don't know what that means. I was talking with him today, and he looked out at the 70,000 people here and said, what does a man have to do to get this many people together? Gifford said on television, Evel, you're doing it. This was the largest crowd that had ever seen him perform, the largest by far. This was the crowd that should have been at Snake River. Kids and families. The prices ran from $3 to $8 for the show. Affordable. This was his public relations masterpiece. The masterpiece was just making tickets cheap. He came down the ramp on a 3rd trip and he gave the thumbs up to the producer to let them know that it was real. Tried to get up to speed somewhere between 93 and 95 miles an hour. The number he felt would give him a distance of 130 feet, enough to clear the buses. The parabola was all wrong. I don't know what a parabola is. I'm assuming the ramp. From the beginning. Too flat, too short. He came down hard on the front wheel on the plywood safety extension that covered the top of the last 2 buses. Blam! The 13 bus. The motorcycle bounced high in the air. He was thrown forward. There was a moment perhaps where he could have saved himself. He tried to hang on, tried to hang on, tried, but then he was gone. Over the handlebars, flying, flipping, gone. He landed and rolled over and rolled again, and the motorcycle followed him, stalked him, seemed to know what he was doing. Let me tell you, if you and your motorcycle get thrown in the same trajectory, guess what's going to happen? You guys are going to follow each other. Just letting you know that. When he stopped rolling, the motorcycle rolled on top of him. He's down, and he is hurt, Gifford said on the telecast. Oh my God, Knievel's mechanic, John Hood, was the first to Knievel. He pulled the motorcycle off Knievel's legs. Frank Gifford was close behind. Gifford was terrified. He saw a bone sticking out of Knievel's hand. He saw blood coming from Knievel's mouth. Gifford thought he not only had been part of a televised death, he was part of a televised death of a friend. The crash was violent and stunning. How could anyone survive? Knievel had almost landed at Gifford's feet when he finally stopped. He got front row tickets to it. The announcer dropped his microphone and bent down and was only slightly heartened by the fact that Knievel was trying to speak. This would be the Daredevil's dying declaration, possibly his last words. Gifford listened very hard because he wanted to make sure he heard exactly what he said. Frank, Knievel said. Yes, Knievel, Gifford said. Get the broad out of my room, Knievel said. It's a weird thing to be worried about at that point. The scene that followed was dramatic, melodramatic, serious, yet strange. Part B movie, part Obermagu passion play, I don't know what that is. Part Roadrunner cartoon. Knievel was shifted carefully into a stretcher and carried towards an ambulance. The crowd was beginning to cheer. He was alive. Knievel didn't want to go to the ambulance. He wanted to go to the ramp. He wanted to talk to the people. He wanted a microphone. Forget the blood, the bone in the hand. The route was turned toward the ramp. Room was cleared with each step. The microphone was brought close. Knievel asked to be helped up. The process was very slow. When he finally stood, this guy knows how to build the tension. When he finally stood, one arm and shoulder of the promoter, John Daly, for balance and strength, he made his announcements. Ladies and gentlemen of this wonderful country, he said into the microphone, I have to tell you, you are the last people in the world who will ever see me jump, because I will never ever jump again. I'm through. It seems rushed since it just happened. The reaction from the English crowd was mixed. There were as many boos as there was cheers. A lot of people who thought this was an act. He really wasn't hurt, couldn't be hurt. He was up there talking. That's true. The people around him knew differently. He clearly was injured. He was in a lot of pain, winced every time he moved. His hair was everywhere. As soon as Evel's hair is screwed up, you know that there's an issue. His face as dirty as if he had come from 8 hours of the mines back home in Butte, Montana. He should have been somewhere in the middle of the city now, siren blaring, headed towards an emergency room. He was here. He wanted to walk off the ramp. Walk off the ramp, Gifford said. He should get on the stretcher. Help me walk off the ramp, Knievel said. I got you, buddy, Gifford said. He walked off the ramp. Progress very slow. Gifford at one side, John Hood at the other side, but he walked. Every time he paused, someone would suggest the stretcher. Every time someone suggested the stretcher, Knievel would plead his case. I want to walk. Please help me. I want to walk out. Please. I want to tell you something, Frank. I don't know how I got here. I'm hurt awful bad. I walked in. I want to walk out. He eventually was put on the stretcher, lifted into the ambulance, taken to the Royal London Hospital in Whitechapel. A 2-hour trip through traffic. He was diagnosed with a broken right hand, a compressed fracture of the 4th and 5th vertebrae in the lower part of his spine. So we don't know. Lumbar, probably. A fractured left pelvis and a 7 3/4 inch split in his right pelvis. Jeez. Once again, his injuries, as serious as they were, did not match the impact of the pictures of the crash, the dialogue, the words to the crowd, the way he looked. This again was stuff that never had been seen on TV. This was more than reality. This was hyper reality. He looked as if he were dead. I thought we already went over this, that he wasn't dead. In the hospital, Knievel blamed his idiot mechanic and the buses. The American bus was 8 feet wide. The London bus was 8.5 feet wide. 6 inches per bus, 13 buses, 6.5 foot difference. Give him the extra 6.5 feet and he would have made the jump perfectly. Give him different gears based on the knowledge that the buses were wider and he would have made the jump perfectly. The idiot mechanic kept quiet because he was in need of a job, but pointed out a couple of things years later. The first was that Knievel had practiced only once, and that was that time for the press in the parking lot. The second thing was that this was the first time in his life Evel ever talked about technical things. He was not a technical man. He basically used 2 Harley 750 bikes for his shows. One bike for wheelies, the other for jumps. The wheelie bike was geared lower, so it was easier for him to flip the front end upward and ride that way. The bike jumping was set up with higher gears for speed necessary to make the jump. The miss was no different from any of Knievel's misses. It was a miscalculation. He had no speedometer on the bike, no tachometer, did no research, nothing. He jumped totally instinct and feel. His feeling was wrong here. I'm saying he G'd into the bottom of that ramp so hard that's what actually, because there was no transition down there. I think that's what, if there was no G there, if it was nice and smooth like the way the roll-in was, I think he would have been fine. The retirement lasted 3 days. The worldwide show wouldn't be seen until Saturday. And on Thursday at 5:30 in the morning, Doug Wilson's phone rang in New York. Wilson had returned home to edit. Knievel told him to make a big edit. Wilson should cut out the whole speech to the crowd. Turned out Knievel didn't mean it. He was going to retire. The speech would look stupid. No, it won't, Wilson said. We'll say something people will understand. You can't run it, Knievel said. We're going to run it, Wilson said. Knievel became angry. He threatened to sue Wilson, to sue ABC, to sue everybody concerned if the speech ran. On Saturday, the show ran. The retirement speech ran. The tape was spellbinding. This was something the people did not see in the technology of 1975. This was different. This was exciting. Argue the morality of what the guy did for a living, fine, but admit that this was some kind of show. He walked in, he was going to walk out. After the flop at Snake River Canyon, this was his rebound of Evel Knievel. He was in the hospital for 11 days, then back at the Tower Hotel for 5 more. His wife Linda hurried to London along with the kids Kelly and Robbie. They accompanied him back to New York and then home to Butte, where he was scheduled for 3 more weeks of bed rest. He said he would return to London in the fall to tackle those big buses again. You told 70,000 people you were going to retire, said a reporter at John F. Kennedy Airport. How can you say that you're going back? I don't care what I say, Knievel said from the gurney. The schedule calls for me to jump again in September. There you go. So I did a crash breakdown on this. I think that if there was transition at the base of that takeoff, I think he would have had the extra couple of feet to make it. Just watch right here. That scrubbed enough speed to do that right there. 100%. So, here you go, people. I hope you enjoyed a little story of Evel Knievel's Wembley Stadium jump.